The sewing machine hummed its familiar tune at 2 in the morning, but tonight, something felt different. Malia Santos pressed her face against the cracked window of their tiny apartment, watching her mother's tired fingers guide fabric under the needle. The bills on the kitchen table grew taller each week, and the dreams in Malia's heart grew quieter. She didn't know that in exactly 7 hours, her entire life would explode. Carmen Santos had been sewing for rich families since before Malia could walk. Her calloused hands told stories of 18-hour workdays and skipped meals so her daughter could eat. The woman who once designed dresses in Colombia now mended torn seams for pennies in a foreign land. "Mija, go to bed," Carmen whispered without looking up. "School tomorrow." But Malia couldn't sleep. The electricity bill sat unopened on the counter, marked "Final Notice" in angry red letters. Her mother pretended not to see it, but Malia watched her shoulders shake with each stitch. At 17, Malia had learned to dream quietly. College seemed impossible when they couldn't even afford new shoes. Her friends talked about prom dresses while she calculated whether they could afford both rent and groceries this month. That's when she made the video. Standing in their cramped bathroom at midnight, wearing one of her mother's handmade dresses, Malia spoke to her phone camera about dreams that felt too big for their small world. She talked about her mother's sacrifice, about beauty that comes from struggle, about hope that refuses to die even in darkness. "Sometimes you have to believe in tomorrow when today feels impossible," she whispered to the camera, tears threatening to spill. She posted it without thinking and went to bed. By morning, the video had 3 million views. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Notifications flooded in faster than she could read them. Comments poured in from around the world, people sharing their own stories, praising her courage, calling her an inspiration. But one notification made her heart stop. A direct message from Elite Models International. "We've been watching. We want to talk." Standing in her school hallway, surrounded by the chaos of viral fame, Malia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Students who'd never noticed her before suddenly wanted selfies. Teachers looked at her with new eyes. The girl who'd been invisible for 17 years was suddenly the center of everyone's universe. Lucas Rivera found her by her locker, his concerned eyes cutting through the madness. "Malia, this is crazy. Are you okay?" Lucas led the youth group at their church. He was the boy who brought their family groceries when money got tight, who helped their mother with heavy sewing orders, who saw beauty in her long before the world did. "I'm fine," she said, but her hands trembled as she showed him the message from the modeling agency. "This could be it, Lucas. This could be our way out." The doubt in his eyes should have warned her, but Malia was already dreaming of paying her mother's bills, of buying her a real sewing machine, of finally giving back to the woman who'd given everything. The Elite Models International office gleamed like heaven itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city and everything sparkled with success. Malia had never seen anything so beautiful. Victoria Sterling, the agency director, wore confidence like expensive perfume. Her smile was perfect, her handshake firm, her words carefully chosen. "Malia, darling, you're exactly what the world needs right now. Authentic, real, fresh." The contract sat on the glass table between them, thick with legal language that might as well have been written in a foreign tongue. Victoria's manicured finger traced the highlighted lines. "Standard modeling contract. Photo shoots, campaigns, events. We'll make you a star, darling." But as Victoria turned the pages, her tone shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly. "Now, there are some adjustments we'll need to make. Nothing major, of course." The words felt like silk wrapped around broken glass. "First, you'll need to lose about 15 pounds. The camera adds weight, you understand. And we'll need to work on your image, hair, makeup, wardrobe, professional styling." Malia nodded eagerly. She'd do anything to escape poverty. "And one more thing." Victoria's smile never wavered. "This industry demands complete focus, total dedication. You'll need to minimize distractions." Distractions? Family drama, boyfriend issues, anything that pulls your attention away from your career. We've seen too many promising girls get derailed by emotional baggage. The words hit Malia like ice water, but Victoria continued seamlessly. "Think of it as an investment in your future, in your family's future. Imagine what you could do for your mother with this kind of success." That evening, Malia sat across from Carmen at their tiny kitchen table. The contract lay between them like a bridge to another world. "Mija, this sounds too good to be true," Carmen said, her voice heavy with worry. "What do they want in return?" "Just some changes, Mama. Nothing serious." But Carmen's eyes had seen enough of the world to recognize danger. "And what about Lucas? What about your friends, your life here?" "This is my life now, Mama. This is our chance."
Carmen reached across the table, her work-worn hands covering her daughter's smooth ones. Sometimes the most expensive things come free, and the most valuable things cost everything. But Malia had already decided. She signed the contract that night, her signature sealing a fate she couldn't yet see. When Lucas arrived the next morning with coffee and her favorite pastries, Malia could barely look at him. "I'm moving to the city," she said without preamble. "The agency is setting me up with housing, training, everything." Lucas set down the coffee carefully, his hands steady despite the earthquake in his eyes. "What about us? What about your mom?" "This is bigger than us, Lucas. This is my future." "No, Malia, we were supposed to be your future." But she was already gone, even though she was still sitting there. The girl who'd made the video about family and sacrifice was disappearing, replaced by someone who'd chosen fame over love. Lucas left without another word. Carmen locked herself in her room and cried. And Malia, she packed her bags and didn't look back. She had no idea that signing that contract was the first step towards losing everything that truly mattered.
The camera loved Malia Santos, and Malia learned to love it back. Within weeks, her face graced magazine covers across the country. Fresh Face of the Year, they called her. The girl next door goes glamorous. Every headline felt like validation, every photo shoot like proof that she'd made the right choice. The transformation was swift and merciless. Her long, natural hair was cut into a sleek bob. Her eyebrows were reshaped. Her skin was bronzed to perfection under studio lights. The girl who'd made that viral video in her mother's handmade dress now wore clothes that cost more than Carmen's monthly rent. Stunning, photographers breathed. Absolutely radiant. But between the flashing lights and fake smiles, something was dying. Carmen called every day at first, then every other day, then just once a week. "Mija, how are you eating? Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm fine, Mama. I'm busy." Malia's voice grew shorter with each conversation, her patience thinner. "Lucas asks about you. He misses you." "Lucas needs to move on." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched like a wound. "We miss you too, Mija." "I have to go, Mama. Photo shoot." Click. The city embraced Malia like a lover who demands everything and gives back glitter. Penthouse parties with people whose names she'd only read in magazines, designer clothes delivered to her door, restaurants where single meals cost more than her family used to spend on groceries in a month. She was living the dream. So why did she feel so empty? At a launch party for a luxury brand surrounded by models and celebrities, Malia caught her reflection in a bathroom mirror. The girl staring back was flawless, professionally styled, perfectly posed, utterly hollow. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. "Your mom's in the hospital. Nothing serious, just overwork. Thought you should know." Malia stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it and rejoined the party. The next morning, Victoria called with exciting news. "Darling, we've got you the Crystalline Cosmetics campaign. National television, billboards, the works." But there was always a but. "They want you to lose another 10 pounds, and we need to address the family situation. Your mother called the office yesterday quite upset. This kind of drama is exactly what we discussed. She's attention-seeking. This is exactly the kind of distraction that ruins careers. You need to make a choice, Malia, your past or your future." That night, Malia changed her phone number. She didn't tell Carmen, she didn't tell Lucas, she simply cut the threads that connected her to the girl she used to be. At the Crystalline campaign shoot, she was perfection incarnate. The camera captured every angle, every pose, every empty smile. The director praised her professionalism, her dedication, her star quality. But when she looked at the playback monitor, she saw a stranger. Beautiful, successful, completely alone. The girl who'd once spoken about family sacrifice had sacrificed her family. The girl who talked about authentic beauty had become a gorgeous lie. But the checks kept coming, the offers kept pouring in, and the hollow space inside her heart kept growing. She was famous, she was rich, she was miserable. And the worst part? She couldn't remember why she'd started this journey in the first place. The scale became Malia's enemy and master all at once. Every morning began with the ritual of stepping onto cold metal, watching numbers that determined her worth. 118, too high. 115, better, but not enough. 112. Victoria would approve. The agency nutritionist handed her meal plans that read like punishment. Celery and almonds for lunch, grilled chicken and steamed vegetables for dinner. No carbs, no sugar, no joy. Your body is your business, Victoria reminded her during their weekly check-ins. Every pound is potential profit lost. The Crystalline campaign was everywhere. Malia's face smiled down from billboards, her perfect skin selling perfection to millions of women who'd never be perfect enough. The irony wasn't lost on her, but she was too tired to care. Tired was her constant companion now. Bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix. Her body, trained to survive on scraps, began eating itself from the inside out. But the cameras demanded energy she didn't have. Smile brighter, darling. Arch your back more. Give us passion, fire, life. How do you give life when you're dying inside? Between shoots, she collapsed in dressing rooms, shaking from hunger and whatever combination of supplements the agency doctor prescribed. Energy boosters, he called them. Industry standard. The pills made her heart race and her hands tremor. They stole her appetite and her sleep, but they kept her standing when her body begged to fall. Her apartment felt like a prison cell decorated with magazine covers bearing her own face. Room service delivered meals she couldn't eat. Designer clothes hung in walk-in closets like costumes for a place she no longer wanted to perform. The mirror had become her confessor and her judge. Standing before it each night, Malia examined every inch of skin, every curve and angle that made her millions. The girl who'd once celebrated her mother's cooking now counted ribs like rosary beads. Her phone, the new number, rarely rang. The friends she'd made in the industry were beautiful sharks who circled success and abandoned failure. Their conversations were competitions wrapped in air kisses and compliments that felt like small knives. "You look amazing," they'd say, their eyes calculating her worth down to the pound. "Thanks," she'd whisper, her voice barely audible above the roar of her empty stomach. One night, she found herself staring at her computer screen, her fingers hovering over the keys. She'd typed and deleted the same message 50 times. "Mama, I miss you." Delete. "Lucas, I was wrong." Delete. "Help me." Delete. Instead, she closed the laptop and swallowed 2 more energy pills. Tomorrow was another shoot, another chance to prove she was worth the sacrifice. Her sacrifice. Everyone's sacrifice. But as she lay in her king-sized bed in her penthouse apartment, surrounded by everything she'd ever thought she wanted, Malia Santos had never felt smaller. The girl who'd gone viral talking about hope had lost all hope. The girl who'd spoken about dreams was living a nightmare. And the girl who'd promised to save her family had forgotten how to save herself. But the machine of fame ground on, demanding more, always more. And somehow she kept giving it, until she couldn't anymore.
The lights were too bright, the music too loud, the room spinning like a carnival ride she couldn't escape. Malia stood on the runway at Milan Fashion Week, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's cars. The crowd was electric, photographers poised like hunters, editors scribbling notes that would determine careers. This was supposed to be her moment, her triumph. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The energy pills she'd taken backstage weren't working anymore. If anything, they made everything worse. One foot in front of the other, that's all she had to do. The dress felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her legs shook with each step. The audience blurred into a sea of expectant faces, their eyes hungry for beauty she no longer felt she possessed. Halfway down the runway, the world tilted. She tried to steady herself to find her center, but the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. The lights above pulsed like a strobe, creating shadows that danced at the edges of her vision. "Keep walking," she whispered to herself. "Just keep walking." But her body had other plans. The collapse was swift and total. One moment she was the embodiment of grace and perfection. The next she was crumbling to the cold runway floor like a broken doll. The silence was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Camera flashes became frenzied. People rushed forward. Someone screamed. Someone else laughed nervously. The show must go on, but how do you continue when your star has literally fallen? Paramedics appeared as if from nowhere. Oxygen masks, stretcher, concerned voices discussing blood pressure and heart rate and dehydration levels that spoke of months of self-destruction. Victoria appeared beside her in the ambulance, her face a mask of controlled panic. "This cannot get out," she hissed into her phone. "Control the narrative. Exhaustion from overwork. Dedication to craft. Make her sympathetic, not pathetic." But the internet had already decided. Videos of her collapse went viral within minutes. #Malia Falls trending worldwide. Comments ranged from concern to mockery to clinical analysis of eating disorders in the fashion industry. The girl who'd become famous for speaking truth was now famous for falling down. At the hospital, doctors spoke in hushed tones about malnutrition, about stimulant abuse, about a young woman whose body had simply given up. They wanted to admit her for observation, for treatment, for the kind of care she had been denying herself for months. Victoria had other ideas. She'll recover at home, private medical care. This hospital's too public. Within hours, Malia was back in her apartment, connected to IV fluids and monitored by a private nurse who spoke only when necessary. The silence was suffocating. Her phone buzzed constantly, reporters wanting statements, brands reconsidering contracts, competitors circling like vultures. Then Victoria's call came, the one she had been dreading. "Darling, I'm afraid Elite Models International has to protect its reputation. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." Click. Just like that, it was over. No famous friends called to check on her. No modeling colleagues sent flowers. The world that had lifted her up had dropped her just as quickly, moving on to the next fresh face without a backward glance. Alone in her penthouse, connected to machines that kept her alive while her career died, Malia Santos realized she had traded everything real for something imaginary. The girl who thought fame would save her had discovered that sometimes success is the most dangerous trap of all. And now, with nothing left to lose, she faced the hardest question of all: who was she when the lights went out and the camera stopped rolling?
The taxi ride from the airport felt like traveling backward through time. Gone were the luxury cars and private drivers. Gone was the first-class treatment and red carpet entrances. Malia pressed her face against the cracked window of the yellow cab, watching her old neighborhood unfold like a memory she'd tried to forget. Everything looked smaller than she remembered. The buildings seemed to shrink, the streets to narrow, the dreams to fade into the harsh reality of fluorescent store signs and chain-link fences. She'd left this place a year ago with nothing but hope. She was returning with less than nothing. The apartment building stood exactly as she'd left it, still weathered and tired, but somehow more honest than anything she'd encountered in her year of fake perfection. Her hands shook as she climbed the familiar stairs, each step heavier than the last. She knocked on the door she'd once called home. The silence stretched for an eternity before she heard movement inside. Footsteps, hesitation, the sound of multiple locks turning. Carmen Santos opened the door and time stopped. Her mother had aged a year for every month Malia had been gone. New lines mapped her face like tiny rivers of worry. Her hair showed more silver, her shoulders curved inward, as if carrying invisible weight. But her eyes held the same unconditional love they'd always carried. "Mija," Carmen whispered, and the word contained a universe of forgiveness. They stood there for a moment that lasted forever, mother and daughter separated by a year of choices and consequences, but connected by bonds that even fame couldn't break. Then Carmen opened her arms and Malia fell into them like a child coming home from the worst kind of nightmare. "I'm sorry," Malia sobbed against her mother's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mama." "Shh, Mija, you're home. That's all that matters." But even as Carmen held her daughter, she couldn't hide the hurt in her eyes. The missed calls, the changed number, the daughter who chose strangers over the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. The apartment felt even smaller than memory suggested. The same cracked walls, the same humming sewing machine, the same stack of bills on the kitchen counter, though now they bore different companies' names in larger amounts. "The hospital bills," Carmen explained quietly when she noticed Malia staring. "When you left, I got sick from worry. Stress," the doctor said. Each word was a small knife in Malia's heart. While she'd been playing dress-up in Milan, her mother had been falling apart. "I tried to call you," Carmen continued, her voice carefully neutral, "but your number was disconnected." "I changed it," Malia whispered. "Victoria said, she said you were a distraction." Carmen's face hardened momentarily, then softened with the kind of grace that only comes from deep faith and deeper love. She was wrong about many things, Mija, but she was right about one. "What?" "I am a distraction. I distract from evil and call you back to good." That evening, as they sat at the small kitchen table sharing the rice and beans Carmen had stretched to feed to, the door opened without a knock. Lucas Rivera stood in the doorway holding groceries like he had 100 times before. But when his eyes met Malia's, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not anger, not resentment, but caution. "Hello, Malia," he said quietly. The boy who once looked at her like she hung the moon now looked at her like she might disappear again at any moment. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice catching on his name. He changed too. The year had matured him, carved character into his features and wisdom into his eyes. He looked like a man now, not the boy he'd left behind. "I heard you were back," he said, setting the groceries on the counter. "Brought some things for your mom." The emphasis on "your mom" wasn't lost on her. He'd continued caring for Carmen even after Malia had abandoned them both. "Thank you," she said, and meant it for more than the groceries.
They didn't talk about the past that night. They didn't discuss the year of silence or the videos of her collapse that had played on every news channel. They simply sat at the familiar table, sharing a simple meal, and pretended that forgiveness could be served with rice and beans. But Malia knew she had work to do. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal with a single meal or a few tears. That night, sleeping in her childhood bed, surrounded by the remnants of the girl she used to be, Malia Santos faced the hardest truth of all. She'd reached the top of the world only to discover it was actually the bottom. Now she had to learn how to climb back up to something real.
The therapy sessions were harder than any runway Malia had ever walked. Dr. Elena Vasquez had kind eyes and a voice that never judged, but her questions cut deeper than any magazine critic's review. Week after week, they unraveled the knots of shame, perfectionism, and self-worth that fame had tied around Malia's heart. "Tell me about the girl who made that first video," Dr. Vasquez said during one particularly difficult session. Malia closed her eyes, trying to remember the person she'd been before contracts and cameras and the constant hunger for approval. She believed in things, Malia whispered. She believed in family, in real beauty and hope. What happened to her? She got lost. "Do you want to find her again?" For the first time in months, Malia smiled, more than anything. The healing wasn't linear. Some days she felt strong, ready to rebuild her life with purpose and meaning. Other days, the old voices returned. Victoria's criticisms, the fashion industry's impossible standards, her own inner perfectionist demanding she be flawless or nothing at all. But she wasn't alone anymore. Carmen worked beside her daughter at the old sewing machine, their hands moving in rhythm like a prayer made tangible. They started small, altering clothes for neighbors, mending tears that seemed to represent more than fabric damage. "Mija, what if we made clothes for girls like you used to be?" Carmen suggested one afternoon as they worked together. "What do you mean?" "Real girls, with real bodies, real dreams." The idea grew slowly, like a plant finding sunlight after a long winter. They started with sketches, designs that celebrated curves instead of hiding them, clothes that made women feel beautiful in their own skin instead of demanding they change to fit a mold. Lucas helped with the business side, his economics degree finally put to use in a way that mattered. He worked quietly alongside them, his forgiveness growing stronger with each day, trust rebuilding one small gesture at a time. "What should we call it?" he asked one evening as they spread fabric patterns across the kitchen table. Malia looked at her mother, at Lucas, at the simple life they were building together with their hands and hearts. "Authentica," she said. Authentic. The first collection was born from their own stories, dresses that fit real women's bodies, tops that accommodated different shapes without shame, jeans that celebrated hips and thighs instead of demanding they disappear. Each piece came with a tag that told a story, not of perfection, but of purpose. "Every body tells a story worth celebrating," read one. "Beautiful comes in all sizes," declared another. "You are fearfully and wonderfully made," proclaimed a third, quoting the psalm that had become their foundation. The response was overwhelming. Women who had been told they were too big, too small, too much, or not enough flooded their small social media presence with photos and testimonials. Mothers bought clothes that helped their daughters feel confident. Teenagers posted videos celebrating their bodies instead of criticizing them. "We're running out of fabric," Carmen announced one morning, her voice filled with the kind of exhaustion that comes from purpose instead of desperation. "Then we need help," Malia said, looking around their tiny apartment that had somehow become the headquarters of a revolution. That's when the idea crystallized. "What if we use the profits to give girls scholarships?" Malia suggested. "Girls like I was, girls who have dreams but not opportunities." Lucas looked up from the laptop where he'd been managing orders. "For what?" "For anything, college, trade school, art classes, business training, whatever they need to build real dreams instead of chasing fake ones." And so the Authentica Foundation was born. For every dress sold, they funded an hour of tutoring. For every shirt purchased, they sponsored a college application fee. For every pair of jeans that helped a woman feel beautiful, they invested in a girl's future. The scholarship recipients weren't models or influencers. They were students and dreamers, daughters of immigrants and single mothers, young women who needed someone to believe in their potential. Malia interviewed each applicant personally, seeing her younger self in their eyes. The girl who needed just one break, one chance, one person to say, "Your dreams matter." "Tell me what you want to build," she'd ask them. And they'd tell her about law degrees and teaching careers, about businesses they wanted to start and communities they wanted to serve. Real dreams built on solid foundations instead of viral moments and fleeting fame. The media eventually found them. "Fallen model finds redemption in fashion," read the headlines. But this time, Malia didn't care about the narrative others were writing. She was too busy living the story that mattered. Standing in their first real workshop, a small space they'd rented with profits from their growing business, surrounded by sewing machines and fabric and dreams made tangible, Malia understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, purpose. Not fame, family. Not the world's definition of beautiful, God's definition of beloved.
2 years later, Malia Santos stood before a mirror again. But this wasn't the harsh, judgment-filled mirror of her modeling days. This was the gentle mirror in her childhood bedroom, the one that had watched her grow up and welcomed her home. The woman looking back was different from both the desperate girl who'd made a viral video and the hollow model who'd collapsed on a runway. She was healthy. Her eyes held light instead of emptiness. Her smile reached all the way to her soul. Today was special. The Authentica Foundation was announcing its 100th scholarship recipient, and Malia was giving the keynote speech at their first annual conference. "You ready, mija?" Carmen asked from the doorway, adjusting the collar of the dress they'd designed together, a piece that celebrated strength instead of demanding perfection. "More ready than I've ever been." The conference center buzzed with energy unlike anything Malia had experienced in fashion. No air kisses or fake compliments, no calculating stares or whispered criticisms, just genuine warmth from women who'd found their worth in something deeper than appearance. Scholarship recipients filled the front rows, girls who were now studying medicine and engineering, business and education. Dreams funded by authentic beauty, futures built on solid ground instead of shifting sand. 2 years ago, Malia began, her voice steady and sure. "I thought I knew what beautiful meant." The audience leaned forward, hanging on every word. "I thought beautiful meant fitting a mold someone else created. I thought it meant changing everything about myself to match an impossible standard. I thought it meant choosing fame over family, success over soul, appearance over authenticity." She paused, looking out at faces that reflected her own journey, women who'd believed the world's lies about their worth. "I was wrong about all of it." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Beautiful isn't about fitting in, it's about standing out for the right reasons. Beautiful isn't about being perfect, it's about being purposeful. Beautiful isn't about what others see when they look at you, it's about what God sees when He looks at you. Her voice grew stronger with each word, carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. Psalm 139:14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." But for the longest time, I didn't know that full well. I let the world tell me what wonderful looked like, and it nearly killed me. Tears flowed freely in the audience, tears of recognition, of healing, of hope. The modeling industry promised me everything and delivered nothing. It offered me the world's definition of success, and I lost my soul in the process. But God offers us something better. She gestured to the scholarship recipients, to Carmen beaming with pride in the front row, to Lucas whose eyes shone with love for the woman she had become. He offers us purpose over perfection, family over fame, authentic beauty that comes from living out His design for our lives instead of trying to squeeze ourselves into someone else's mold. The applause was thunderous, but Malia wasn't finished. Every girl in this room is fearfully and wonderfully made, not because you fit a size 2 dress or look good in a magazine, not because you have perfect skin or perfect hair or perfect anything. You are wonderfully made because the God of the universe formed you with intention, with purpose, with a plan that no modeling contract could ever improve. She looked directly at the scholarship recipients now. Chase dreams that matter. Build something real. Use your gifts to serve others instead of serving yourself. And remember, the world will try to shrink you down to fit its tiny idea of valuable. Don't let it. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the room. You don't need to fit the world's mold to be beautifully used by God. The standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. But for Malia, the moment was timeless. This is what she'd been created for, not to model clothes, but to model authentic living, not to sell products, but to sell hope. As the conference wound down and scholarship recipients lined up to take pictures with their hero, Malia realized she'd found something better than fame. She'd found her calling. That evening back in the apartment where it all began, 3 generations sat around the kitchen table. Carmen, Malia, and Lucas, plus the newest addition, baby Sophia, named after wisdom and carried with the hope of a different kind of future. "Tell me the story again, Mama," Sophia gurgled in her baby voice that only family could understand. And Malia smiled, cradling her daughter close, knowing exactly which story she meant. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a girl who thought she had to change herself to be loved. But she learned something important." "What did she learn?" Lucas prompted, playing his part in their family tale. "She learned that the most beautiful thing about her was the thing she almost threw away, her authentic self. And when she stopped trying to be what the world wanted and started being who God made her to be, she found something better than fame." "What did she find?" Carmen asked, her eyes twinkling with the joy of happy endings. "She found her purpose. She found her family. She found her way home." And as the sun set through the same cracked window where the story began, Malia Santos knew she'd found something the modeling industry could never offer. She'd found herself. The girl who'd gone viral talking about hope had become a woman living it. The girl who'd spoken about dreams had learned to build them. The girl who promised to save her family had discovered that they'd actually saved her. In the end, she learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need to fit the world's mold to be beautifully used by God. You just need to be willing to break the mold and be yourself.